And thank you to everyone who is attending today. We hope we caught you on a lunch break so that you can have some entertainment here and learn about building green infrastructure in San Diego. Again, my name is Lucero Sanchez. I am the Community Policy Coordinator with San Diego Coastkeeper. Here are our other speakers, Alejandra and Sara. They are both from the Stormwater Department, and I will give them both a few seconds here to introduce themselves. Alejandra, do you want to go first?
Thank you, Lucero. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alejandra Gavaldon. I'm Strategic Program Manager with our Stormwater Department Think Blue team. And one of my roles with the team is to engage with the community and identify additional opportunities where we can partner with all of you to bring information about the great work that our Think Blue team does for the benefit of our communities. And as we look to advance our green infrastructure projects that will benefit your community, ways that we can engage with all of you. So anyway, so we really appreciate your attendance today and the conversation ahead.
Thank you so much. And then Sara.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Daskaby. I am with Stormwater Department, Think Blue as well, and I'm a senior civil engineer. My role within the city is I'm responsible for managing and planning of the capital improvement project. Just want to make sure that we identify the needs within the city of San Diego and prioritize the needs and initiate the project as needed and capitalize the project.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're really excited to have both of you here to share all of your expertise and go through what it takes to build green infrastructure in San Diego. We've already introduced our speakers. Great. We are going to talk a little bit about what green infrastructure is, why it's important, as well as getting into the bulk of our presentation, which will be project implementation phases and a specific project highlight. So we've picked one green infrastructure project that we wanted to use as our example to tangibly explain a lot of these implementation phases. We'll talk about how you can get involved, and then we'll go into that question and answer. As Ali mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please add them to the chat. We'll be making this more of a discussion when it comes to those implementation phases, but we will have time for questions and answer afterwards, as well as if we don't get to your questions, we could reach out separately and share any answers that we might have. So about San Diego Coastkeeper, we are a 501c3 founded in 1995 as San Diego Baykeeper. We were originally formed to address chronic pollution in San Diego Bay. And really, in short, Coastkeeper uses a combination of education, science, outreach and engagement, and advocacy to chip away at each major water quality and water supply issue that we take on. We're really excited to partner with the city on this and just make those connections. We really believe that this multifaceted approach is the way things get changed. So that's a little bit about San Diego Coastkeeper, a little bit about Think Blue. Think Blue is the City of San Diego's Stormwater Department, which works in all weather conditions to build, maintain, and modernize efficient stormwater infrastructure. They are the department that make clean water and clean beaches possible and make sure that we have proper stormwater management. So again, our staff is here for that and are welcome to chime in during the presentation and or during that Q&A portion. Together, we do a lot of great things together. We have projects in the educational space with our project Swell, which is a K-6 water-based science curriculum that is fully supported and free for teachers in San Diego Unified. This was created in partnership with the City of San Diego. We're very excited to make sure that the next generation has a good understanding of clean water, clean beaches, and a healthy environment. And then we do community outreach presentations like this one to make sure that we are talking about why things are important, why you should be engaging with the stormwater department and how we can move forward for climate resiliency and more green infrastructure projects. So now you've heard me say green infrastructure a couple of times. Green infrastructure, what is that? It is a nature-based solution. It filters and absorbs stormwater. So another way to think about it is an approach to water management that protects, restores, and sometimes mimics the natural water cycle. So that's in contrast to what gray infrastructure is, which would be projects like concrete or steel, like dams, seawalls, concrete channels. But green infrastructure is so much more innovative. It'll create that climate resiliency. It'll allow reduction in flooding by soaking up rainwater, filtering a lot of the pollutants that stormwater picks up when it rains. And it just overall beautifies our community as well, and it increases that sense of community throughout the city of San Diego. So we're excited to be moving forward with these kinds of projects. What is the capital improvement program? That is part of that poll question that we asked, if you were familiar or not with that. But what is it? It is a long-range plan for all individual capital improvement projects and funding sources. So these CIP projects are generally large and expensive, and the assets that they install replace or rehabilitate what will likely be required for decades of public use. So some examples, I know that was kind of a mouthful, but some examples of what those project types are airports, bikeways, bridges, storm drainage and flood control, park and recreation center, sidewalk improvements, water and sewer facilities and pipelines, utilities undergrounding. That all falls under this umbrella of the capital improvements program. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. We're, again, really excited to have some experts on for that. With that, we will get into our CIP project process. From now on, I think I will be abbreviating capital improvement program to CIP. But here we have a phase timeline of what the project process looks like. And this was actually taken directly from the Citizens Guide to Infrastructure that's available on the City of San Diego's website. If you all haven't checked that out, please do. We'll talk a little bit more about it at the end and make sure that we send it in follow-up resources. Thank you, Ali, for adding that to the chat, or whoever added that. That is the link there. But a lot of what our presentation is today was taken from that guide and just adapted so that we can have more of a conversation around it. So you don't have to read it, but all of the information that we'll talk about can be found there as well. So here, we have different phases, and I do want to make sure that I highlight that this is an average timeline. It's subject to change. We absolutely saw that a little bit with COVID and with other issues around like funding and things like that. There are different circumstances that might make this take a little longer, but these are the approximations of what that looks like. So every one of these phases is something we are going to talk about in the next few slides. Moving forward to our introduction of that first phase, need identification. Before a project gets going, the Stormwater Department identifies the project needs, identifies and looks throughout the city and sees what needs to be done, what kind of benefits will be gained by that community, what kind of requirements they have to meet, how much pollution and how much pollution prevention can benefit from this, the community needs, and a lot more goes into that process of just identifying where those projects will take place. So with that, I'm introducing our structure for this presentation. I will have a broader slide like this one with the introduction of each phase. And then the next slide after that will be our more tangible example. For this presentation, we've chosen to highlight the green infrastructure project of Ashley Falls. So I'll get into that, but that is where our experts will come in and have a little bit more of that perspective of how that project actually came to be. So our need identification for Ashley Falls. Ashley Falls is in Council District 1 in Carmel Valley, and it's a green infrastructure project that was implemented to improve water quality in stormwater runoff in the area, which generally discharges to Carmel Valley Creek, Los Penasquitos Creek, Los Penasquitos Lagoon, and the ocean. So the goal was really to reduce pollutants such as bacteria, metals, and nutrients to make sure that we are not contributing to a lot of pollution in the Miramar Reservoir watershed. So I'll pass it over to Alejandra and Sarah if they want to add anything to what went into that need identification for Ashley Falls.
Lucero, yeah, you just described it very well. Just a few things that I would like to add, that as you mentioned, Los Penasquito watershed is one of just our watershed that the goal of the department is to reduce sediment and bacteria, and the Ashley Falls is located in a city-owned parcel that propose water quality to remove sediment and bacteria before discharging to Carmel Valley Creek that eventually go to Lagoon, which Lagoon used to be a salt marsh. Now, due to just discharge of a lot of fresh water and sediment to the marsh, now it turned to be a brackish marsh. And one of the goals, which is another capital improvement project, is Los Pen Lagoon restoration, to restore the lagoon, to bring it back to the used to be salt marsh. And this project also definitely benefit that project as well, to restore the lagoon. So that's a very important project for us that helps the other project as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that is another project that's in the works. So I highly encourage you all. We'll talk a little bit more about resources in terms of where you can find all of these great infrastructure projects that are going on, but that's really one to check out. Alejandra, did you have anything to add, or shall we get into the next slide?
I think we can go to the next slide. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, once we have some needs that have been identified, we go into project initiation. The project at this stage will be determined with making sure that there is enough funds for the project. There will be a proposal made to the Engineering and Capital Projects Department. So I'm going to go into that next slide. All of the pictures that are on these Ashley Falls slides are from that area. Here you can see two pictures of the before area of what this looks like, and later you'll see what the completed project looks like. This was initiated in 2013. There is an address here in case anyone lives in the area or even just wants to check out the space. But this project includes the construction of cleanouts, inlets, and pipes that we'll get into a little bit more moving forward. Anything along this one? I think this one's fairly short in terms of just initiating a project.
I'll just add for everybody, Lucero mentioned that this is the before picture. So just take a moment to really kind of look at this picture. So when we show you the after, you can really kind of understand what Lucero was saying when we take an approach at a green infrastructure project, how we want to not just get our water quality flood management needs, but how we also use this as an opportunity to bring in multi-benefits to enhance the community. So thank you, Lucero. So yeah, this is a good picture for you to keep in your mind as we move through the presentation for future stages. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Once the project is initiating, it moves on to the planning and pre-design phase where engineering and capital projects will work to develop a scope of work, have some estimates around the cost as well as the scheduling. They'll conduct some research surveys. This is an opportunity for public input in this stage here where the community will be made aware of what that project will look like. And again, they'll confirm funds for the project, since that's absolutely something that could stall a project moving forward. So what that looked like for Ashley Falls, here are some preliminary designs just to share with specifically the Carmel Valley Community Planning Board. It was shared in 2015 as an informational item, and again was brought to their attention in 2019 prior to construction. But this is just an example of the Stormwater Department having that community input and community engagement through this process. So I really wanted to just highlight that to make sure that you're all aware that that's a way that we can kind of put our thoughts into these projects and support the Stormwater Department when they have a project that they want to move forward for the benefit of our communities. So this took about a year, from 2013 to 2014. Anything to add, Sarah or Alejandra?
No, I don't have anything to add. Like,
Awesome, thank you. Following pre-design, we have design. Here you get into the more specifics of it all, conducting those studies, investigations, and calculations, as opposed to having the concept designs. You really get into the nitty-gritty of planning this, making sure that everything is accounted for, conducting further community outreach as well throughout this process, making sure that all the construction plans and estimations are moving forward, and making sure that any land that needs to be acquired does that. So here are some examples of what the design looked like. This phase was probably the longest in Ashley Falls project, 2015 to 2019, and you can kind of see why. This, I will make no promises that I understand any of this, so I will pass it over to Alejandra and Sarah to just highlight some pieces of this.
sure, Lucille, thank you. I'm gonna just start talking about that. So this is basically just the engineering designing, and I don't expect everyone just it's not friendly, but I'll try my best to walk everyone through that. So Ashley Falls, which is a water quality basin, as you mentioned, that received the stormwater runoff from 92.8 acre of the drainage area. And then originally, before the construction of the project, the runoff with untreated and polluted discharge to Carmel Valley Creek Road and Carmel Valley Creek, as we mentioned, that will eventually discharge to Low Span and Ocean. But constructing this project, portion of the runoff through the proposed low flow pipe, which is, as you can see, along the Carmel Knoll Drive. You can see just, there's a 12-inch reinforced concrete pipe that proposed, and then another just, inlet is proposed, and also along the Pearl Manway, another low flow pipe is proposed. So through the 3 low flow pipe, which is when I said low flow, I want to just, elaborate more on that. Then there are the existing main storm drain along the Carmel Knoll and the Pearlway that discharge the runoff that receiving from the 92.8 acres to Carmel Valley Creek. When we proposed and constructed this low flow pipe, they are below the main pipe, so portion of the runoff will be diverted to the basin, and then this way the water goes to basin, and vegetation within the basin helps with removal of the pollutants such as metals, such as nutrients, bacteria, anything that will be picked up from the upstream and developed area. And as it infiltrates to the water quality, there's also perforated pipe is proposed within the middle of the basin, and then that will pick the remaining of the runoff that cannot be infiltrated within the ground. It pick the runoff, and the treated and clean water then discharges to the main storm drain that eventually go to the ocean. But now the water that goes to ocean is cleaner now, just in pass through the water quality basin. And again, you can see the head walls that helps with reducing the velocity of the runoff, that reduce or eliminate the erosion of the water quality basin. Yeah, so that's about just the design plan of the water quality basin.
Thank you, Sarah. And I would like to add here, I know that when I first was introduced to stormwater projects or projects in general, my head was spinning a little bit through the design phase and all of this. And one of my fundamental questions is, like, why is it that a design phase takes so long? As you can see here, this one took about 4 years. And the reason behind that, I think my takeaway and what I learned is that there is so much engineering and analysis that the city team has to go through to be diligent and to ensure that the way they design this project is ultimately going to meet the objective of the project, right? From flood management, water quality, and so forth, and also do it in a way that identifies any other, Sarah, as you heard her say, when they start doing the design, they identify other infrastructure or other issues in the surrounding community that need to be taken into account. So that way the design is efficient and does not end up resulting in having unfortunate impacts upstream or around the community. And oftentimes, as Sarah was saying, when the team starts doing these analysis and developing the design, they come across additional information that the team may not have been aware of, either because there's no records or the terrain has changed, that they then have to go and sometimes do more analysis or modify the design. So the takeaway is that through collective team effort and multiple analysis and thoughtful process, the outcome is a design that is going to be efficient, effective, and going to meet the original objectives and make sure that there are no adverse impacts to the surrounding community. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you for all of that insight. The same way Alejandra mentioned, feeling like your head spinning, it definitely, I think that highlights the reason we wanted to do this presentation in specific, is to show how much planning and processes go through this kind of project, because a lot of the times as community members, we hear about it early on when there's project initiation and research, and then it takes so long, and we, from our perspective, don't really know where that timing goes. But it's super helpful for Alejandra to add that perspective as to why design takes so long to ensure that it's meeting all of the requirements and community needs. So moving past design here, we have our construction and bid award phase. So here there will be the determination of contract specifications, and the city will advertise this project to get some construction bids. They will be selecting the most responsive and the most responsible bidder, so that process takes a little while. And it really highlights the importance of why planning ahead for these kinds of projects is really important versus having an emergency project that needs to take place where you're not going to get the most responsible or the cheapest bidder. You're going to get something a little less than what you wanted or more expensive. So this is here that phase for construction and bid award of Ashley Falls that happened in early 2019. And this contract was awarded to the Southland Paving Inc. for $766,000 with an expected contract duration of 11 months. So here you start to see what that what Ashley Falls starts to look like during construction phase. This, from the pictures beforehand, if you remember, looked very different, but now we're getting into what construction looked like. So I don't know if Alejandra or Sarah has any insights on construction or award. We will be getting into construction in the next slide as a whole phase.
I don't know.
No, just to highlight that this is the city's construction process and policy. So that is citywide. It's not driven by stormwater department or engineering capital projects. So this would follow those guidelines and procedures.
Yeah, and if I'm not wrong, this also generally goes through city council, right? So there should be opportunity for public comment if that were something that, because it needs to be approved that way.
Absolutely. So through some of these processes, and I know that we can get to it more in the Q&A, we can flag those where it does require council approval, such as the appropriating of funds that will talk about the budget process and allocating money towards CIP projects. And that's absolutely correct. Construction contracts and other contracts will go ahead and go through the council and committee process.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to highlight there are so many opportunities for the public to get involved or to just listen more on some of the projects that are going on in our communities. Once a construction bid has been awarded, we get into the construction phase where engineering and capital projects oversee the construction, make sure that there's quality assurance and control, test any construction materials, and just manage the entire project as a whole. Then the department goes through a final walkthrough of this. This is also a time where the project goes back out to community to be shared and to have more information on. This project specifically had its construction phase through August 2019 to June 2020. It was again brought up to the Carmel Valley Community Planning Group ahead of construction, and there were signage and a door hanger that was distributed to the community in 2019 to make sure that the community knew what was going on and what the construction was. Now we also have a CIP map where it's interactive and you can look up your address or where you work or anything that you might be driving by and see what kind of project is in the works or being planned for that area. So again, that we'll talk about in the resources slide at the end of our presentation, but we will also share a link to that in our follow-up. Awesome. And then finally, we get to post-construction. Once this project is finished being built, there are some warranty inspections. It gets filed with the city permit records and mapping section. And there is the need for long-term monitoring and reporting of any environmental mitigation and just making sure that there's upkeep as well to these projects. So now we see a completed Ashley Falls here in our post-construction. This project specifically is something we are currently in the 25-month plant establishment period that started in July of 2020 and will be ending in August of 2022. But this is what it looks like today. We've gotten a lot of pictures, which I'll share in the next slide. But it's still going through that establishment period and still being monitored, but it is a fully functioning green infrastructure project that is already benefiting the community in so many ways. I'm going to flip to the next slide where we have a few more pictures and we can kind of highlight some of the components of what the final project had. So Sara and Alejandra, take it away.
Yeah, so Lucia, yeah, that's a just great example. So the picture on the bottom left shows the head wall that I mentioned. You saw in a design plan. As you can see, it has a riprap that reduces the velocity of the runoff as it adheres to the water quality basin to make sure it avoids the erosion and infiltrate slowly. And the box next to that is an overflow, so the basin is sized for the to receive a certain volume of the runoff. So if it exceed the capacity of the basin, so this is the overflow that basically if the water level goes above the opening, so it discharges to that, which eventually going to the storm drain main under the Carmel Knoll Drive and Perlman Way Drive as well. And also you can see just, in the other picture, you can see the vegetation, which as I mentioned, helped with removal of the nutrients and some other pollutants. And obviously just, provide at the aesthetic level and recreation level. And this project also provide a trail, which I don't think we can see it from this picture, but it's a nice trail that goes around the basin. As Alejandro mentioned, it's a multi-benefit project. So it helps also with, community having a nice, just, basin, treat the water at the same time, just, have a trail, enjoy the scenery and have it just, nice.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. As I add a couple more pieces of info, I don't know, Sarah, if you can check your audio. We're getting some comments that it's difficult to hear you or there's a little bit of an echo. So thanks for checking that, and thank you for flagging that for us. So yeah, with this, you can't see it with some of these pictures, but one of the things that I wanted to highlight, as Sarah mentioned, is that there is a trail and a wonderful walkway all around this project. And that's the type of community enhancement that the kind of that multi-benefit integrated approach that we are really excited and proud in our stormwater department that we are now taking to our projects. In the past, again, the scope was specific and narrow to meet our objectives, but now we're really saying, and also working with some of our partner departments, okay, we have this need, but what other needs are in the community? And if we're going to make an investment in this area, why don't we go ahead and make sure that we look at it through the lens of our climate action needs, our Resilient San Diego, making sure that we have thriving communities. So a lot of our green infrastructure projects, if we have the ability to add trail or walkway enhancements and pathways, we are doing so. We have some examples of that also in our Troyes watershed. So that's a pivot and something that we're doing differently. So it makes, in our opinion, green infrastructure projects so much more exciting for our community members and also for our sister departments that also have other objectives that they need to meet for the benefit of the city. As Sarah was saying, the infrastructure that you're seeing, the culvert, and then also I'm going to call it the box for lack of a better official name. You can see that there's kind of a hole at the top of the box. So when it rains, this is planned. So in this basin area, the water will actually capture and it'll go into that, I'll call it the hole of the box. And then there's the treatment underground. So when that fills up, so that's how we are looking at some type of also minor flood management, water retention, capturing that water, and then it's treated. So with that, as also highlighted, comes the maintenance. So once we build this, we have to maintain it. It has a long life ahead of it since it's a CIP project. But I don't know, Sarah, if you can speak to the maintenance component of it, because there are dollars and costs associated with maintenance. So after we build a CIP project, we need to make sure that moving forward as a department, we communicate to our decision makers and legislative body what our budgetary and financial needs are to properly maintain these investments. And then that goes through the budget process. So the team needs to go ever so often to open up the box, see what's going on down there, make sure that it's working as it's meant to work, and then go ahead and do any cleanup that is needed. This is another part where the eyes and ears of the community members is really important as they walk around and drive through. If they see anything that looks out of the ordinary, then we always, again, we don't see this happen often with some of our projects, but if it does, you can go ahead and reach us through be it Get It Done, or you'll have our contact information to let us know so the team can go out there. But as part of the project follow-up, there's that maintenance and oversight and follow-up budgetary components that occur on an annual basis through the city's process. I was a little long-winded, but I hope that added some additional reference points for community members.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting the maintenance. It's definitely an important part that sometimes we don't think about when we talk about building a project. It's also the years that it takes to maintain and make sure that it stays looking as beautiful as it is and continues to give the community the benefits that it was made for. So with that, that concludes our Ashley Falls example and all of our construction phases, or our CIP project process phases. I did want to highlight two other projects and shorter slides, because this Ashley Falls project is a very beautiful, very visible kind of green infrastructure project. But green infrastructure isn't always just the vegetation or the above ground construction. So we really wanted to highlight a project that has a lot of underground components and want to make sure that people are aware that green infrastructure, while it's called green infrastructure, isn't always just vegetation and green, but there are more invisible green infrastructure projects that are so impactful. And we wanted to highlight Alamo Salvation 68th Street Basin's green infrastructure. This will, I see music is playing. I don't hear any music, but let me know if there's any music. This project is currently in the construction phase. Here you can kind of see some images of that as well as a design map. This specific project will feature components to reduce water pollution and flooding. It'll have drainage facilities, biofiltration boxes that will replace underground concrete gutter that was there beforehand. So again, just wanted to highlight that this project is nearing the end of those project phases, but it's not as visible as something like Ashley Falls. So there is a wide range of what green infrastructure looks like. And moving on to the next project here, we absolutely wanted to highlight a project that is earlier on in the phases. This project is currently at 100% design, but it still does have a couple of opportunities for public input because it is starting its CEQA process. So there will be some opportunities for public input that Sarah might be able to add a little bit more context to, but here are some concept maps and an area so that y'all can see this. This is, I believe, in the Logan Heights neighborhood. So if you live in that area, please check this project out and there might be opportunities moving forward to participate in this.
So thanks, Lucer. Yeah, I want to quickly add to that too. So this project is at 100% design as you noted here, and it's located in a choice watershed, which is also, it's one of the high priority watersheds for us to remove the pollutant from. And the project receiving water from the 44-acre of drainage area upstream that goes to this water quality that originally discharging to Hamasha channel directly untreated, which goes ultimately to the Choice Creek. So now instead of just directly discharging to the channel, it goes to this water quality basin or bioretention basin that's proposed. Again, pollutant will be removed and treated water and clean water will discharge to the Hamasha channel. So as you mentioned, the project is in environmental review process. They just started the CEQA process, the California Quality Protection Act. And so during the environmental process, our development services department notified the planning community planning committee and the public, and they have a review and comments period. So they have time to comment about the project. So city will address their comments.
Thank you so much for that. We're excited to have more and more projects come through the pipeline and see the city become more green. So with that, we did want to highlight ways that you can get involved. Now that you have a little bit of a better understanding of all of the different components that go into capital improvement projects, if you have any questions, one, add them to the chat and we can chat about them now. We do have some time, but if generally you just have questions, you are always welcome to contact the stormwater department. I always want to highlight that if you live in the city, you should make sure that you're using the resources that are available to you. If you speak Spanish, Alejandra speaks incredible Spanish. We did our second presentation in Spanish. So if you know anyone, please have them check that out because it is available for viewing. But if you have any kind of questions, email them. Use the Get It Done app as well if you have any needs. And follow any specific projects in your community. I mentioned the map viewer, which we'll mention in the next slide again, but you can go to your community and find what projects are in the works years out. So you can kind of follow that process and have input when there are opportunities for that, or just, you know, make sure that you know what kind of projects are happening in your area. Or if you think that there are projects that are needed, also communicate with the city on those kinds of things. But overall, also just sign up for email notifications. Both the City of San Diego's Think Blue Stormwater Department and San Diego Coastkeeper have newsletters that generally have these opportunities to participate in workshops or just updates highlighting some green infrastructure projects. So those are really great opportunities to just more passively be engaged in what's going on. So with that, I will add our additional resources. Here is a picture of that CIP Map Viewer. I did it pretty highlighted, so usually you're zooming in and it's a lot less full, but you can see all of the projects, and it links to one-pagers that have timelines and a little bit of a description of what those projects look like. So it's a really helpful thing that the City of San Diego provides, as well as the Citizens Guide to Infrastructure. Again, we've linked that in the chat, and we will be sending that on a follow-up email. But a lot of what today's presentation was about was taken from the Citizens Guide to Infrastructure. So there are those resources in case you have more questions along those lines. And again, Think Blue does have a website, thinkblue.org. So there you can learn more about the Stormwater Department and all of the wonderful things that they do. And San Diego Coastkeeper also has a website, sdcoastkeeper.org, where you can learn how to get involved in your community and learn more about Coastkeeper.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I do have a few questions here that I've been recording, and thank you to everyone who's been adding them to the chat throughout the presentation. So our first question is from Arn Johansen. He has a couple, or they have a couple questions, sorry, excuse me. Will Ashley Falls project be coordinated with the City of Poway Rattlesnake Canyon that is in the upper headwaters of the drainage? Maybe Sara or Alejandra can talk about that.
Yes, so the Ashley Fall is constructed and was not coordinated with City of Poway, but I guess just, you know, this is because it's a water quality project that's happening within the City of San Diego jurisdiction, and it doesn't change the drainage pattern. So it's not going to affect anything that's located upstream or downstream. So as I mentioned, portion of the flow that used to drain to the Carmel Valley Creek will be now diverted to the water quality basin, and then eventually the treat and clean water discharge to the Carmel Valley Creek. So it doesn't change the drainage pattern, and since completely the parcel is located in the City of San Diego jurisdiction, the coordination did not happen. But again, throughout the project manager from Engineering Capital Project Department reached out to community planning group. The project, as you mentioned, Lucero, presented Carmel Valley Community Group. So if any question, anything that they had at that time was responded and provided response.
Great, thank you. A couple follow-up questions from Arn. Is groundwater recharge a goal of these green infrastructure projects?
So, Sarah, if you want to,
No, go ahead.
I think one of the, let me share this, and then I know Sarah will be able to add some more information. One of our fundamental goals of Stormwater Department Think Blue is to make sure that we educate so folks see stormwater as a resource, and for us to capture and reuse that stormwater in the most beneficial way. So working in partnership with our Public Utilities Department, I know that countywide they've done a thorough stormwater harvesting, capture and reuse analysis. The city has embarked with PUD on those additional analysis to determine what are viable options and the locations so we can capture and reuse this valuable resource. Sarah, anything to add?
Thanks, Alejandro. You brought a very good point, and yes, that's basically the most benefit we can get from recharging the groundwater, but infiltrating the clean water to the groundwater and to the ground, basically. But unfortunately, San Diego does not have a lot of places that has a good soil infiltration capacity, which one of them also located right now under Ashley Falls. As you could see in a design plan, the perforated storm drain proposed at the bottom of the basin. So basically when the water infiltrates to this engineered soil media, then the clean water will be picked up by the storm drain, under drain storm drain that discharge eventually to the main storm drain. But anything that, any low infiltration, so it goes to the ground, but a lot of them, because of just, there's not enough and there's not good infiltration capacity for the soil under that. So a lot of them will be picked up by the under drain.
But with PUD, we're analyzing all of those options. And since in San Diego, we do have groundwater recharge and aquifer limitations.
Yeah.
In Los Angeles, for example, their situation is very different. But green infrastructure also, as Ali and Lucero mentioned earlier, it comes in so many different sizes and shapes. So green infrastructure is also rain barrels, which is stormwater reuse and capture and reuse, right? So that's the type of green infrastructure that all of us can go ahead and have in different capacities where we live or where we work. But anyways, we definitely, that's a priority for us, and we're advancing that in partnership with PUD.
Awesome. Thank you for that discussion and additional context. Another follow-up question from Arn. There are many parks, open spaces, and canyons that are experiencing down cutting. Is there an inventory of all these? And what is the plan to remediate these?
So with that, that falls under our city's Park and Recreation Department. And I know that we just went through a park master planning effort and was approved by council. So we can definitely follow up and provide more information on that. In regards to parks and open space, what I will say is that when it comes to our discussion today in green infrastructure and the priorities of the Stormwater Department, when we prioritize and identify green infrastructure projects that we want to request funding for in advance, we're looking through the lens of, we have to look at it through what are our main mandates, right? We have to make sure that that green infrastructure project is going to address water quality improvements or issues, be it to be in compliance or address those impaired water bodies and or flood management. It does have a lot of additional co-benefits, as we talked about, from providing resiliency, climate benefits, and even creating open space. But our lens in prioritizing our limited resources is that project really going to move that needle and that key objective. But we also, again, in our new approach at stormwater management, we coordinate and collaborate with many of our city departments like Park and Rec, so we can go ahead and leverage those needs and opportunities. But to specifically answer and address your question, we'll go ahead and send you a link for the Park and Rec department, or you can look at it in .gov and the master plan, which I think will speak to some of that.
Great, thank you, Alejandra. The next question we have is from Megan. Is using native vegetation a primary goal of these projects? There's a great potential to increase habitat for wildlife and pollinators there.
So definitely we would like to promote that, but it depends on just the condition of the site and this basin receive fresh water and which plant can survive in that circumstance, and also the types of the plant that's needed for removal of the pollutant. There are some specific plant and vegetation that are needed to be implemented in the green infrastructure to help with the removal of the pollutants. So we have to select those plants as well. But for each project, we have a landscape engineer that go through all these requirements and make sure that they address all the requirements and use the best that they can, just satisfy the project needs and requirements, and promote the habitat wildlife.
So yeah, just to add to what Sarah was saying, the vegetation selection is going to be driven by the pollutants that we're trying to address and how effective that vegetation will be in helping with the water quality. But through those guidelines, landscaping guidelines and engineer review that Sarah mentioned, the city also has policies in place to ensure, again, we're a drought. We're a community that wants to conserve water and have effective and efficient landscaping. So using native vegetation and drought tolerant plants is something that's a priority for the city.
Great. And then our last question here, unless anyone else would like to kind of chime in the chat, is from Nordine. They say, I live close to a street that has a long ongoing project of renovation, and we have asked that some green infrastructure is included in the project. The project is a Streamview Drive project phase 1 and 2. The project team is saying they're not considering greenscapes, but will simply build concrete and paver areas. Is there any way to improve that? And they've also included the CIP app project there.
So if I understand the question correctly, so they're talking about another capital improvement project that's Streamview. It's a bundle project with the transportation department that they are proposing a roundabout and widening some lane along the Streamview. Along that, the stormwater department bundle its project with transportation project. And as we went through the presentation, always the green infrastructure is not in nature, vegetation type of solution, which always we would like to have that, but sometimes because it's just in a it has to be located under the street and right away, the same as Alamo. So this project also proposed an underground vault that store the runoff, and then after that discharge it to the media filter. That's very similar to Alamo, that goes through a filter of the soil engineering media to remove the pollutant. Then again discharge the treated and clean water to the storm drain main. So it still just provide the benefit of the water quality, improve the water quality. This project also in Choyes, one of the high priority watershed. It helps with just remove of the pollutant and have a clean water. But since it's located in the right of way, it has to be just underground vault to allow for the traffic to pass by. But always we base on the project location and the needs. Our first choice is basically just obviously to go with just a nice, natural green infrastructure. But also we have all different types of the green infrastructure that all have a one goal, that to improve the water quality.
Thank you, Sara. Alondra, did you have anything to add?
No, I think if you have additional questions, then based on the response that Sarah provided, we'll be happy to follow up with you. Yeah, it's that definitely touches on the complexity of bundling and working with departments and tapping into their projects and how we can add some stormwater benefit. But again, based on the schedule that you saw earlier, right, design and keeping things on track, sometimes there's a limited window of opportunity where you can make design adjustments to add these other enhancements if we're leveraging like a transportation related department. But Yeah, if you have follow-up questions, we'll definitely be happy to follow up with you.
Yeah, and I believe the next slide has the contact information for Alejandra and the city, but we've recorded all of the comments that are in the chat. I think we have one final question from Arn. How do you assure that invasive weeds are not used in your plant selection?
I don't have that specific response off the top of my head, but we will follow up with the right department and staff to provide you with the appropriate response. I don't want to wing it.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any other questions in the queue. And Nordine, we have recorded your response. So again, please feel free to reach out to Alejandra directly or Sarah with any of your specific questions or concerns. Just want to thank you all for joining today. I don't know, Lucero, if you had anything, had any other things to add, or Alejandra, or Vicky, or Sarah on the line.
No, I think thank you so much to everyone who took some time out of their day today to attend this. We hope that it was informational and that you have some more resources to be able to connect with the Stormwater Department and continue to move green infrastructure projects forward as best as we can. But again, just reach out to either Coastkeeper or Think Blue with any questions or needs you might have. And thank you again.